I'm Josh Wintersgill. I'm 28 now. I've got spinal muscular atrophy type 3. I was diagnosed with SMA at 18 months old. I've been non-ambulatory now since the age of, I would say permanently since the age of 14. I could weight bear up until that point, but I then had spinal fusion, and that kind of then, prevented, well, didn't prevent me, but I didn't get straight back to doing my physio and exercises and transferring the way I used to straight after surgery. So I then moved over to hoist transfers from the age of 14. So I've been non-ambulatory, I would say, since then.
Yeah.
I then went to college.
Similar. Yeah, sort of similar to me with the whole spinal fusion thing. Like when I got it, I did sort of limit my movement after that, but yeah.
Yeah, it does, because I think the recovery can take, a good couple of months. And if you're not exercising over a good couple of months, that's a lot of, muscle wastage that we lose.
Yeah, over that time,
it's tough. So then so after spinal fusion, I then finished school, went to college, did 2 years of software development, left college, went to university, lived at uni for the best part of 4 years with a year's placement studying IT management and business. I then graduated from uni, went into the world of cybersecurity, worked there for the best part of 3 and a bit years, and then started up my business AbleMove, which we'll probably touch a bit more on shortly. That's a very, very quick overview of me.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, actually. I think it's just good to hear when people kind of in our situation do like go to uni and just sort of make most of it and sort of start their own business and still kind of carry on with whatever their kind of ambitions were before or whatever.
Exactly.
So I think that's important. Thanks for that bit of background about yourself. And I'm aware that we did speak to you. I think it was Ryan Dack spoke to you about a year ago.
Ryan.
Spoke to you about a year ago about your shooting and how you got into that and stuff. But today I wanted to focus up more about kind of your business and how it was difficult over lockdown. Obviously, people weren't exactly going on flights and things like that. So from that angle, just generally lockdown.
Okay, I mean, lockdown. I mean, for anyone, that's got SMA or muscular dystrophy, it would have been an extremely hard time. There's no beating around the bush. But from my personal experience, it's been really challenging. So I lived with my sister and a lodger in Bristol. So that's where I had been since I'd been at uni. I'd pretty much lived in Bristol for the best part of 8 years, 9 years. And I'd moved away from home at 18 and was reliant on carers, private carers. So I did have a care agency for quite a few years, and then I moved across to private PAs. So I had a really good group of about 3 or 4 private PAs that were managing all of my personal care between them. And it was great. I was working, I have a business, living independently. I had everything set up really nicely. I had a partner at the time. And, life was good. It was in a very good place.
Yeah.
And, we worked very hard to be able to achieve that. It's no mean feat just to have that basic level of independence. Right?
Yeah, it's like years of sort of organisation and getting everything in place.
Exactly. And, for people that don't have our conditions, they can pretty much, move house overnight and crack on and do what they need to do. But for us, the moment anyway, COVID then brought me back home to my roots, which is in Somerset, because of the issues with having carers, and nobody really knew what was going on at the beginning. So my family and my partner at the time and my sister, we all agreed that it was safer for me to come back here and live here and reduce the contact. So came back here, and I've been here ever since. And that's now 2 and a bit years. Yeah, well, I live at Nans, you see. It's not catered. I don't have a ceiling hoist here. I don't have a bathroom. I can't get to the toilet, so I'm having bed baths. I've been going to the toilet in a commode for the last 2
I know exactly
years.
how you feel, because I moved house last year, and it's taken a full year to get the adaptation sorted. So I've pretty much been the exact same boat as you. where I've been like waiting a
Jesus
year for the
Christ.
council to organise it, but we're getting there. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to know that somebody else has been in that position, because
Yeah,
it, from a mental health perspective, it's not to be for sick, Sanjeev. I mean, I got used to it initially, but long term, the amount of stress and pressure that not having basic personal care, is really hard to
yeah,
adjust to. It's been tough, and I'm in the process at the moment of deciding whether or not I move out from my nan's and go into my own accommodation. So I'm trying to go down the social housing route now. I'm fed up of renting in the private rented
yeah,
sector. So my advice to younger people is, if you can get social housing, take it, and get them to adapt it to how you want it, because the private rented sector is pretty ruthless.
yeah,
You never know how long you're going to be there until somebody decides to go, right, we need our property back now, or you might change jobs, in which case moving can be a right pain in the arse. It's just, yeah, I think now I'm getting old, not older because I'm still only 20, 28,
Are you
but I think you
28?
do
Yeah.
start to think, yeah, but you do start to wonder, is it time to just kind of settle down for a little bit now and try and,
Yeah.
find my feet again?
With your business, obviously, how was that
Yeah.
impacted by COVID?
Yeah, well, we were reliant on the travel industry.
Yeah,
We very much positioned the product to help people get on and off aircraft. But the product can be, our slings that we originally created can be used for a whole range of other activities. But of course, they are still in some ways related to travel, whether it's getting on and off boats, getting on and off rides, getting whatever it might be, getting in and out of
yeah,
I don't know, a helicopter, whatever you want to do in terms of, getting out and about. The
yeah,
sling will enable you to do that without the use of a hoist. But we were reliant on the travel industry, and with aviation crashing and burning quite literally, we literally, weren't doing any business at all. We had the furlough scheme, which was a lifesaver. And what we did was we took the opportunity to look at what other products can we create or bring to market that would have a wider impact on people's, day-to-day living. So
yeah,
we changed the brand around a little bit. We brought a couple of new products through, and really used that time of not generating any sales to look at bringing other cool stuff through. So
yeah.
I did a
That's
lot
cool.
of I did a lot of volunteering as well. So we did a lot of research around wheelchair users, and travel in particular, obviously using aircraft. So we did a global piece of research, which we did with Flying Disabled, so Christopher Wood, which many of you will be familiar with. And we kind of looked at the overall issues that people have when it comes to flying, not just getting on and off.
Yeah,
Looking at damaging of wheelchairs,
yeah. It's
looking at
a big issue.
special assistance as a service, looking at airlines, basically looking at the whole patch about, how do you manage your toileting when you go abroad, go on board the aircraft, can you, all of that sort of stuff. So that was really good. So we got some really good industry recognition for that. And we're supporting, and I still now to this day continue to support the industry at a global level on improving, the way in which,
Yeah,
us as a community of wheelchair users travel by air. So there's a lot of stuff that I did that people don't necessarily know that I did,
yeah,
where we're making impact in the background.
yeah. I think a lot of it is obviously there's been a few campaigns about
Yeah.
kind of making it easier to fly. I'm sure you're probably aware or involved with them. The ones where it's like the being able to take your chair on board and like sit in your wheelchair. I think that's hopefully going to happen soon. Hopefully, but
It
I don't
it,
know.
it is going to happen. No, it is going to happen.
Yeah,
It will happen, I think, I'd like to say within the next 5 years.
yeah,
We seem to be getting very, very close now. I think it's very exciting, and I think what the solution that will be brought to the industry will be kind of like, imagine like the very first iPhone that got brought out.
yeah,
Yeah, everyone looks at it and it's amazing, and it's changing, game changing, and then over time things evolve,
yeah,
and things get better and better. And I think that's what will happen with this, is that it's a stepping stone to show the industry that it can be done, and once it is done, we can then improve it, even more.
I think it's really big. Yeah, it's really huge, like especially for say like me, which like I love like going on holiday to different places. So I'll be, when that happens, I'll be on the first flight to everywhere. Just going to.
I think the aviation industry would be in for a shock.
It just feels crazy that, like, to me, to think that somebody could just go on a plane somewhere without any hassle. Like, that's, I just all that stuff puts me off it, because all the stuff that goes on around it. Like, so
yeah,
I'm really hoping it's going to be soon. But obviously you'll know better than me, so it's positive that you're saying that. So that's good news for everyone, I think.
It's going to happen. It is going to happen. Yeah. So the name of my business is AbleMove. We provide a range of disability living aids, from slings to leg straps to harnesses to waterproof wheelchair covers. And it all came about originally when I was on holiday in Tenerife in 2017. So I'd always been conscious of air travel. Being a wheelchair user, I think with SMA in particular, with type 3 diagnosis, I was a lot more mobile as a child. So going on holiday, my nan would just pick me up because I was fairly small and light, and would be able to carry me onto the aircraft, or I might be able to hold her hand and kind of walk slowly on. But of course, as you get older and that mobility deteriorates, you all of a sudden then go from not being able to be carried or being able to walk on to being transfer on. And I think when you're younger, it doesn't really hit you until you become much older, more heavier, and more, more prone to sensitivity. And in particular, this holiday that I went on in 2017, I remember I was reading a book called Start with the Why by Simon Sinek, and it got me thinking about, why I was doing my job at the time in cybersecurity, and I enjoyed it and it was great, but didn't really give me the kind of the mojo, if that makes sense, to really get up every morning. I did it and it was good, but I wanted something slightly different that was going to be a bit more, I don't know, impactful in terms of, real life impact. And so reading this book, it kind of got me thinking about, what can I do? And I think from my experiences of air travel, I wanted to be able to create something that made that travel experience easier, getting from your wheelchair to the aircraft. And I looked at Google, and I found various different types of products that worked, but nothing that really kind of added any kind of comfort and dignity to the whole process of getting on and off an aircraft. So typically you'd arrive at an airport with no equipment, and an airport may have a hoist, like an Eagle hoist, or a sling that might be available to put on you at the airport. But it's not until you get to the other end, where there may not be a hoist or a sling available, that you're then like, oh crap, how do I now get off the aircraft? It's back to being lifted under the arms and legs again. So I thought, well, that's one issue. The other issue is the discomfort of sitting on aisle chairs, the discomfort of sitting on an aircraft seat. Yeah. And I thought, well, how can we alleviate that time in where you've got huge amounts of discomfort? How can we improve that? So I thought, okay, well, what if we could add something within the sling that gave pressure relief? So that was sat on the aisle chair or the aircraft seat, you're not having to fight taking your wheelchair cushion off to then put it on the aircraft seat whilst you're being transferred, but also have something that you can be sat on going through the aircraft, so you get pressure relief on the aisle chair. So we then combined the sling and the seat and a cushion into one, and that's how I came up with the idea of the Able Sling, and that it's kind of gone from there, really, Sanjeev. We've then brought another version of our Able Sling, which is a cheaper version, a more basic version that doesn't work with a hoist. And then we transitioned again into other areas like our leg straps and our harnesses and our waterproof wheelchair covers. So it all started from Tenerife when I was reading this book. And I'll never forget, like when I came back from Tenerife, that holiday, there was a gentleman who we met, and I actually met a couple out there who I've stayed in touch with to this day, who now helps supply our products in the Dutch market. It's phenomenal. On that same holiday. And then on the aircraft when we were coming back, I remember seeing a gentleman who was well over 6 foot, And, he was a big chap, like 3-4 people required to get him on.
Yeah.
And I watched him struggle getting lifted onto the aircraft. And me and Nan both looked at each other, and because Nan knew what we had been discussing in terms of my idea on the holiday. And she goes, he could do with this right now. And we went up and spoke to him, and we gave him our details. And the moment I got my first batch of stock, I sent him one, and he uses it to travel at the moment, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think it's good to hear about something that sort of tried to make a difference. And it's like as if it was sort of meant to be, as you said, with that holiday and all the things that you kind of thought of and saw. So
we registered the business officially with Companies House in February 2018, but we didn't actually start officially trading until February 2019. So technically coming up 3 years, of which we've spent the best part of 2 years, just over 2 years in lockdown.
Yeah.
So I've not even really had a full year of trading yet.
Yeah. I suppose it's happened still like quite quick then, like the whole procedure of starting up and actually having like products like for sale and stuff. So so what was the process like sort of making the product then, like making the sling? Like what was the process behind that for other people that might be kind of interested in making a business or selling stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I was fairly new to kind of innovation, product design. I actually reached out to an organization called Innovate. I think it was Innovate UK or Innovative Designs. Or I reached out to an organization, and they helped me initially with some of the designs to get my kind of thinking down on paper. And then I transitioned over to a sling manufacturing company who basically specialize in the manufacturing of slings, because essentially it is a sling. And so we leveraged their expertise. We partnered with them, and they helped us, develop the initial prototypes, use them on people, and then bring them through, and then get them to a point where they were kind of, market ready. So I brought a partner. I identified a partner who could take on their manufacturing side, because that was really important, because they are medical products. They do need to be CE marked and tested to certain requirements. And of course, I didn't have that skills, and I don't need those skills necessarily. I just need a partner to support us in being able to do everything that we needed to do to bring it to market. So I leveraged them. I also managed to get some financial support. I managed to get some free support from a company called Business West. They work with government to provide entrepreneurial support. That's not just general support to people with disabilities. That's just to any entrepreneur. And I was able to get some really good help there. But if there are individuals out there that want to go and get specific help when it comes to entrepreneurship with a disability, there are quite a few organizations out there. So you've got Kaleidoscope, who are based in London. And then there's also a few charities that give funding out to disabled entrepreneurs. So the Stelios Awards with Leonard Cheshire. It's worth keeping an eye on those. And there's actually some other support coming through, which I can't say too much about at the moment, but there's a couple of other people with disabilities setting up their own entrepreneurial support programs for people with disabilities as well. So it's actually quite an interesting space to be in, entrepreneurship with a disability, because it gives you that flexibility to manage your life around what you want it to be, rather than, having those conversations with employers, all the time. It's just nice to be able to work for yourself.
Yeah, I think it's sort of similar to sort of freelance, because I feel like it's good to be able to do that and be able to kind of decide what you want to do and when, and just be flexible. So like just doing hours that suit yourself and adjusting things to like away from the typical like 9 to 5, which it just isn't really possible for us. It's good to be able to do that. So that's some good information for those of you that want to start some sort of business. So if you're thinking about it, then you should definitely go ahead with it and find the funding, because it is out there. The last thing I wanted to ask and talk about was it was more of a lighter tone, but it was just like your top tips for traveling. What sort of tips have you got for people flying? So I'll start one off. That just a good one that I normally do is my chair cushion. I normally take my chair cushion off. I put it on the plane seat. So that's one for me. So yeah, have you got any ones that you use that are handy?
Yeah, there's lots of top tips. I mean, always do your research before you go. You know, you're the person that understands your needs better than anyone else. So, or your requirements, sorry, rather than needs. So I think it's always best to check in advance with both airlines and airports. And it doesn't necessarily to be, you know, airlines or airports. If it's, you know, hotels, for instance, I think it's all natural for us to kind of plan ahead. So I think research is always, you know, the most important one. Secondly, if it comes to flying, my top tip will always be write down always have available to hand your weight. Sorry, not your weight as in personal weight, but the weight of your wheelchair and the measurements, because you're going to need to provide those at multiple times in your journey. That might be at the point of booking, when you're at the airport, going through the airport, and vice versa. So always make sure that you've got that information available. The other part with flying is to always think about leaving some form of instructions on your wheelchair for the ground handlers to know how to turn your wheelchair from manual to electric. Often a lot of they're getting better now. I think the training is becoming a bit more substantial, but still, when you go abroad, there is still challenges with, you know, special assistants knowing where those points are, and often that can lead to them pushing the wheelchair or struggling and causing damage. The other bit I would say is any removable parts that are really, really important. So, you know, if you can, what I do is I take some bungee bands or bungee cords, and I take my foot plate. On my new chair, I can't take them off. But if you've got foot plates or armrests that can detach from the chair, take them off, fold them up, and wrap them up with bungee cords around the chair, or take them on board into the cabin. So, for instance, like my joystick, I know that if that breaks, that's the wheelchair.
That's done.
You've got no hope. So I always say take off your joystick and take it onto the aircraft, because otherwise you've had it if that's broken. So I think when it comes to flying, those are probably my most important bits when it comes to the chair and what you need to do.
Yeah, it's definitely important, because a couple of times when I went to Amsterdam, I came off and my footrest was completely broken. So that was like a bad start to the holiday. I had to just sort of make do. It wasn't really that comfortable, but I just had to deal with it. And another one, just generally a holiday one, is remember your slings. That's a really important one, because once I forgot mine, and then the one we hired was the wrong type. So stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, toileting can be a big one for people. And for most of us that are probably going to be watching this call, accessing the onboard toilet is basically going to be near on impossible.
And so start not happening.
I think for those that, so I have a little bottle that I use. Well, if you tell an airline that you need, before you fly, that you're going to need to go to the toilet in a bottle, a lot of the airlines don't like you actually telling them that, and they can in some cases refuse you on the aircraft because of other passengers. They get really funny about it.
Well, like if you say, is it okay if they use the bottle?
They get really funny. They get really funny about it. So it is bad, and you need to be. My trick is to not mention it. Use a blanket and try and do it very, very discreetly. Discreetly do it. That, you know, people do it, but I think if you get caught by cabin crew, they can get funny, or if somebody puts their hand up. Most people are generally fairly understanding, but I am conscious that I spoke to one airline about it, and they said, "Oh, sorry, Mr. Winterfield, but you're not going to be able to do that." And they wanted me to access the toilet, but of course I couldn't. And bearing in mind, I was going on a very long flight, which was best part of 9 to 10 hours, and I didn't go to the toilet. I didn't go to the toilet for the whole time. I actually held on for nearly 11 hours.
It's just like
from the time.
a lack of understanding, isn't it, of like what people need. It's disappointing.
Yeah, so 11 hours. So my trick really is to take a discrete bottle, or if you can catheterize and have a bag around your leg, so that you don't have to worry about that, then that's, then fantastic. There are some pads as well that you can get that have kind of got like absorbing like gel type stuff in them, or crystallizers. So you can use those as well. It's not
ideal, is it?
But
yeah,
it works.
Gotta do what you gotta do. Yeah, that's some good tips for a lot of people that are hopefully getting back to flying sooner or later. And I think, the difficulty is for long flights, especially, just like being uncomfortable. Have you got any tips in terms of that? Like for me, I normally just take quite a few pillows and blankets to kind of help to support me and stuff like that. But I don't know if you've got any other ones in terms of that.
Of course, you've got your cushions that you can take. Some people take like vacuum type cushions that you can kind of pump air in and pump out. They're really, really good for postural support. There is a product called a Krelling harness, which you can have a look at, that's also very good, which is designed to attach around the back of an aircraft seat and give you upper body support. So you're not having to rely on blankets or somebody holding you up. But again, that only works, for a few selection of people. But again, it's worth exploring to see if it would work for you. And you can buy those or rent them from the Queen Elizabeth Foundation. So you can go to the Queen Elizabeth Foundation and rent them there, or you can buy them direct from Krelling Harness themselves. So I do recommend people looking at those. My only piece of advice is that if you do use it, make sure that you let the airline know that you intend to use it, because that product has to be certified by the airline. Or sorry, not certified. It has to be supported or recognized by the airline, because there's certain criteria that the airlines need to assess against it for safety purposes. That's the easiest way of saying it. So you can't just rock up and expect to be able to use it. The airline needs to know that you're going to use it, because you have to sit in a specific part within the aircraft when using the Krelling harness. So my advice is, if you do choose to use it, make sure that you ring the airline well in advance.
Basically just even just generally, I normally do that anyway, just to talk to them about the situation and what sort of assistance I'll need. One more question actually I wanted to ask is about the sort of moving and handling and the support that you get at the airport. What I think a lot of people have a lot of problems with that. So what do you think we could do to sort of improve that experience?
Moving and handling is something that's always been a problem, and in my opinion will always be a problem. From an industry perspective, they ensure that special assistant staff have basic moving and handling training. And where the issue lies, there's two key issues here. The first one is the consistency of the training and the quality of training that's provided. That first and foremost is the most important thing. The second thing is that there's still far too many airports that don't actually have any appropriate moving and handling equipment in place to facilitate, safe transfers of, passengers that need assistance, of lifting to and from their aircraft. The third other major issue that is very, very difficult to overcome is the language barriers. So I always say to people, if you're going somewhere abroad, sometimes it's really hard to let other people know that don't speak your language where you prefer to be lifted or where your sensitive parts are. So I provide, so with our slings, I actually provide now a little card that they're imagery cards that you show staff of how to lift. Because often it's just a visual. So anyone can recognize visuals. They don't need to understand the text. So visuals are really good ways of prompting people of how to do stuff. And I found that's the best way to overcome any kind of language barriers.
It's a Good point.
So for me, it's something that, as a company, what we do, we can't go around and, you know, train every single airport on all of our products. It's just not. It has to come within the industry out. That's the way it has to go. And all airports, like I said, will have basic moving and handling. So again, it's they should have refresher training every year. And they again, the challenge is that, you know, some people have good days and bad days, and on their bad days, if they're tired, they work very long hours. And it doesn't take a lot for a mistake to happen, you see, Sanjeev, and you know, they can be quite costly sometimes. So it's a really hard one to answer. But yeah, those are my three key areas.
I think it does come from the industry as a whole, where I think they have to want to do it and have to want to take these steps and spend the money to fix it. And another thing I think is kind of to do with flying, but it's like the just generally moving and handling. I think it's always going to be hard because like they're trained as if everybody's the same. And I think that's just a general sticking point for moving and handling, and obviously for flying, because they just presume that they presume that we all have the same sort of movement and need the same assistance, which is difficult.
And this is the thing I always try to explain to people as well, is that you can have somebody with muscular dystrophy or SMA. You could have, if you take, take me and you, for instance. You know, you've got muscular dystrophy, I've got SMA. Our mobilities probably varies. Our comfort factors probably vary quite a lot.
Exactly.
So you can train somebody up on what a neuromuscular condition is, and you know, how best to lift somebody with a neuromuscular condition. But ultimately, people grow and move and feel in different ways, and what might be right for you isn't right for me. And you can't train people. You can't train people on that. I think it's impossible to train people on that. That just comes with experience over time and being able to communicate and explain to the person that's going to be helping you how best to do it. And that's why I think having cards or visuals when you're going to countries where you may bump into people that don't speak your language is the best way.
That's really good advice. Actually, a lot of things I didn't really think about. So thanks a lot for having a chat with us.